Okay, are you guys ready this time?
Let's try it.
I've got to meet people down at the scooter store.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
This is Prudencio at the Hotel California in Todos Santos, listening to Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars. Bam!
Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars, the podcast that blends the modern scooter lifestyle with a twist of the paranormal over a cool cocktail.
Now, if you're new to us, we're a loose group of Vespa riders in search of a perfect stop, preferably a classic pub with great servers hosted by a gaggle of ghosts. We just love those haunted dive bars. Our rides also allow us to delve into the other topics and scooter-related adventures throughout the years.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years. You know, this is our 4th year doing this.
Since our last podcast or total?
Pretty much since our last podcast.
4 years, wow.
Yeah, no shit. Hey, welcome to episode 57, Cannonballs and Kayaks, where we get to know Scott and Julie Taggert, both winners of the Scooter Cannonball. We're also...
Did they tie?
No, 2 different times.
Oh.
Yeah, first he won, then she won. We also collected a poignant and touching paranormal story from a friend of our new scooter store, Dr. John. So stay with us as we work through all this great stuff. What have you been doing? Lonnie the Lizard's with us. We got Coach Mark here in the studio. Our friend Keith Pendominono.
Where is he?
Yeah, he's in Hawaii on a work trip, though he took his wife, and they went a few days early, staying a few days after.
Wink.
A weekend work trip.
Yeah, but though Keith was with us when we did our actual interview with the Taggerts. So he's involved on some level.
Good.
And then Bobby Chong.
Where's Bobby?
Sent him the text. No response.
He's in a different county.
He's sold his house on Five Heights, and he's moved to West Seattle.
Oh, Bobby's big time in this. He's not around anymore.
Yeah,
Another George Jefferson story.
So he just
moving on up.
He just ain't into it at the moment. So, Mark, how's my bracket?
Great, finally. I got a W this year.
You
kicked your ass.
Did. The retired basketball coach. Congratulations.
Basketball gods were with me this year.
You actually won. You took some time, and
now we do need to let people know both our brackets sucked balls.
Yeah.
But
a lot of
mine was better than yours.
I am not paying you until the final game is over. I just want you to know. And I owe you a bottle of Redbreast.
A nice fine blend.
I drank the last 1, 2, 3, 4 that I won.
Stop. It's not necessary to delve into the past.
Lonnie, how's the new boat?
Well, I've been on it once. It's sitting at a slip up in Seattle, and kind of waiting to get used to it and get on it and
looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks really great. Now? What brand is that again?
It's Axopar,
and that's from Norway, right?
Finland. It's a Finnish company. The boat was made in Poland.
So wait, they finished the boat in Poland?
The HQ is in Finland.
They've got a polish.
They manufacture in Poland.
There's a polish on the finish.
and thank you to the Polish people. They've taken on a lot of new...
Amen to
You're going to
that.
have a lot of labor force over there for your next boat.
Well, luckily, they got mine done before they went to war, before they went to help.
Yeah. So how about Mexico? You took a little...
I did.
Took a little trip. Tell us about that trip.
A week down there, pretty quiet, relaxing, got some sun.
A little jealous of the pictures you sent.
Had a few drinks, you know the drill. Yeah,
the drill part.
He was doing the same thing up here.
Well, that's great. And we know Keith's in Hawaii, so I guess that just about covers it.
How about you?
Oh, well,
Have you been busy?
I've been working with, here's how I look at it. I've been working with a new scooter store opening and a spiritual awakening at the same time.
Wow.
Well, the spiritual awakenings you've done for years now.
Well, I've been working on a lot of different things. I've gone from New Catholic to Buddhism, Hinduism, and now my own form of spiritualism, Markism.
That's one notch below
not Marcus.
alcoholism.
But I think I finally have an understanding of the universe, how it works. I've been figuring out the law of attraction and the power of intention. So,
And where do breasts fit into that? And a nice ass.
well, my intention, and don't say those things.
No, I just
Oh, it's a family show.
Yeah.
But no, the South Sound Scooters has been officially open for a month.
We've been open a month. Yeah.
And you exceeded your expectations.
We had reasonable projections, but we did do better. We're lined up for service. We've sold some scooters, and we're into April now. So,
And do you want to share where you're at in the Western region?
no, I don't,
Okay.
because I don't know. I don't know how the actual month finished, but I'd like to think that we aren't on the bottom. So there you go. That's
There's
about
no
as far
doubt,
as-
no doubt about that.
So you are still in business a month later.
Right.
Well,
there's
you know
still
what?
little
There's
bit-
a win.
There's
That's
still
a
a
win.
little bit of money in the operating
A
account.
lot of people just lost money.
Well,
They were taking the under, just so you know.
speaking of scooters, I want to send a big thank you to Andrew at Vespa Portland.
Andrew,
our good friend.
He spent a couple hours. He drove up and spent the day with us at our scooter store, giving us some tips and tricks and some things that have worked for him, and looked at our operation. And
Very
it
cool.
was like having a consultant there, and all I had to do was buy him lunch. So
and I understand one of your very first sales was a new PV 400.
BV,
That's what I said. PV 400.
the Puerto Vallarta 400. And that's our rider is right next to us.
And a
here.
happy owner he is.
Yeah. How do you like that thing?
Love it.
It's a fast
Took it
bike.
to yoga this morning.
Wow. And did you take it inside?
Not yet. Only you take your scooter inside lobbies.
That's a different podcast.
He did the downward dog. So
Ports are closed currently. Yeah. But no, it's been great. It's fabulous. I told myself on my ride the other day when I was riding it, I shouldn't wait 13 years to upgrade a scooter.
Yeah, that's a beautiful scooter and faster than hell, faster than us.
and we have another one in stock right now, ready for the next person. So
Looks beautiful,
if you
too.
but this isn't about southsoundscooters.com.
No, fuck no.
Found at Instagram and everywhere else. This is about chasing ghosts
That's
on
right.
scooters.
Let's get back
in
on
bar.
track.
I've got some unfun facts for the day.
What?
What?
Is that depressing facts?
Well,
Are we talking inflation?
Thought
Supply
provoking,
chain issues?
unfun thoughts. And here's the one. This one I grabbed. I don't know where. I looked at my phone because I make notes, throughout the several months between podcasts, and I love this. And it made me uncomfortable. But here is something to think about. Plants are farming us.
What?
Explain.
It's not the other way around. It's plants are farming us. In other words, they're building and sending out all this O2, right? Or CO2, O2. They use CO2, right?
Yeah.
Right? They create oxygen. That's
yeah.
why the rainforest is so important, so that we can live and grow fat until we die, and then they consume us.
I guess so.
So
Right?
ultimately, they will feed off of us.
They are a different kind of intelligence. Yes.
Is this what your new awakenings brought you to?
No,
Or what,
no,
where
but
the hell are you
it
thinking?
opened my mind to it. So here's another one. Most animals will kill you before eating you, but bears just start eating you
While you're still alive.
while you're still alive. You remember that old joke about the bear attacking the two guys, and one guy stops to put on his tennis shoes, and the guy says, "What are you taking the time to put on your tennis shoes? You can't outrun the bear." And he goes, "I don't need to. I just need to outrun you." All right.
Is that what I tell you? Just play dead?
Yeah, man, they do. Yeah, they like it live, I guess. Here's another one. According to a panel of famous physicists, there are at least 8 nuclear weapons known to be missing. Think about that.
Wow.
Well, North Korea doesn't have them yet. Otherwise, they'd
No,
be
these are
launching.
missing. These are not inventoried. They're gone. They've disappeared. So somebody made some money somewhere.
Wow.
Well, they can't.
That's a scary thought.
If they made money, then they're not missing. They're just hidden.
So they don't know where they are.
8 of them?
Fuck you.
Do we need to start looking for those on our scooter trips? Chasing ghosts and nukes?
Nuclear weapons? Okay, according to quantum mechanics, there's a small chance the whole universe will suddenly disappear in the next 5 seconds. Also, just let me finish.
Take 5.
Oh, take it. Whoa.
Because if we don't have to continue this, I'll take it.
Also, there's a small chance that the universe, Earth, all the people, the buildings, whatever device you're listening to us from, your posts, the whole internet, your personality, your memories, your existence, everything was created just 1 second ago, according to the mathematics of quantum mechanics.
That's above my pay grade. I don't get all that shit.
Yeah, well, and I would suggest whatever you're reading, I'd stop reading.
Yeah, you're overloaded.
Consider yourself woke and time for a nap.
I'm awake.
Time for a nap.
Okay, here's a little easier one. Finally, you have a higher chance of dying on the way to get a lottery ticket than actually winning it.
You know, I always said that about crashing in an airplane. I always thought you had a better chance of getting killed driving to the airport than you ever did.
I think that's
an actual
true,
fact, though.
Unlike the facts you're throwing at us, those are actually real.
Okay, thank you, Board Panda.
Okay, so we're done with no fun facts.
Board Panda provided some of those, and I wrote down some. I don't know where I got them.
This means he's taking his ball and he's going home.
Goodbye.
Okay, goodbye. Hey. So we talked about what we're going to talk about. So let's take some time to talk about the Scooter Cannonball.
Is this part of our title?
Yeah. Scooter Cannonball, Cannonballs and Kayaks. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to have some segments with Scott and Julie Taggert. Scott won this cross-country race in 2018, and Julie won in 2021. The race
So she is the more current winner.
Right, and she had more points in 2021 than Scott did in 2018, but they were quick to say it was a longer route, so there were more points available. The race is about 4,500 miles, starting this last year in Bar Harbor, Maine, ending up in Eureka, California. And just as an aside, Julie spent the following day, the 11th day, riding 450 miles back to her hometown from Eureka with one stop. Well, other than
that sounds like Pandominomo after our trips.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, she's way tougher than us.
So this is a 10-day race. So on a scooter, you'll need to average about 450 miles a day. Now, think about that, because we stop every 20 to 40 minutes on our scooters, on our pub scoots. How many is that?
That's a lot of bars.
Days? It would take us a lot of days.
We on a 4-day trip, we go between 600 and 800 miles.
Right. Right.
So you're doing 450 a day. That's a lot of...
Yeah, they're not doing the same thing we're doing on our trips.
It's kind of like the day we rode home from Eastern Washington and Ike and Bobby Chong skipped out on us.
Yeah.
We rode like motherfuckers.
Right.
Maybe that was 200 miles. It was a long day.
Yeah, so the route includes some of the best roads for scooter riding, motorcycle riding, and some of the worst, including dirt roads.
I actually listened to a YouTube about this today.
Yeah.
And the section in Wyoming, it was like 520 miles of riding and 75 miles were unpaved.
Ooh. Right.
75 miles on a fucking scooter. That's crazy.
That is.
Yeah, they had 185 riders registered for the event, 73 riders checked in at Bar Harbor, and in total, 65 riders posted scores. 42 riders were considered finishers, and of the 42 riders, 15 successfully navigated to and scored all 94 checkpoint locations.
And that's how it's not actually a race to the finish line. It's a whole timing and checkpoint kind of thing. Right,
and there's handicaps. And we would say go to the scootercannonballrun.com and look at all this. The next one is actually scheduled for June of 2023. It'll start in San Clemente, California, and end at Hilton Head.
So
over on the
they
East
do
Coast.
It every other year? Is that
it's every other year, though. Okay. I think it was 18 to 21 because of COVID this year.
Oh, okay, so we should be training. We should be getting in shape for that.
Yeah.
We should always be training.
Well, I think
we
should
do training rides.
Let's shoot for 25 or 27 or something. Well, so we're going to be talking to Scott and Julie. They've won the last two. They strategically set it up. They figured out all the stops, how they were going to stop, how they were going to ride, what they were going to ride, what they were going to weigh, what they were going to wear, even their musical instruments that they brought with them.
Are they a couple or?
They're married, yeah.
Oh,
and this is not a deep dive, though, into the race, this interview. And if you want to get into that, we recommend that you listen to the podcast, A Scooter Affair, where Justin and Julie dig deep into the planning strategy of the race. And I believe it's episode 16 of that very excellent scooter podcast.
Wow.
Found at ascooteraffair.com. You can also find an interview with Scott on the Scooter Cannonball podcast, and just search for that, and you'll dig it up. So
I wish I would have made the interview. I wish I was invited, but I would ask why were they strategically setting up like one's helping the other one win, or they're both?
Yeah, you haven't heard this, but you're going to hear it now. So I'm going to play a portion that.
Right.
Do they answer that?
They're going to talk. Oh. We're going to talk about the Cannonball. We're just not going to dive as deep as they did on A Scooter Affair.
Let's shut the fuck up and listen to it. I want to hear it.
Also, they don't swear.
I didn't know there was other podcasts about scooters. I thought we were it.
No.
Hence the number one ranking.
Well, we're not really about scooters. We just include scooters.
Oh, okay.
So let's get to know Scott and Julie in this first segment, talking about how they ride, how they met, how they live, and all the fun stuff. Let's see if it works, because I've got 3 different medias coming here.
And passion is really dirt, dual sport, little tougher stuff. But I do everything. Street. I just got back from Baja for a couple weeks. Going to Minden, Nevada in the next couple days. So I favor mostly small bike, dirt, and that's what I like. And that helped me a lot in 18. If anybody listens to that, that gave me a big leg up. We had some Death Valley sand traps, and helped us, both Julie and I, in 21 as well. So I'm still actively riding, and I'll let Julie tell her story about CT70s and stuff, right?
Yeah. So I grew up in a distinctively non-scooter family, non-motorcycle family. And when I was around 12, I saw a picture of, like Scott said, a Honda Trail 70 in a picture in a magazine. And I desperately wanted one. I was, this is like heaven to have a Trail 70, but there's no way that I could have got one as a kid. So I met Scott when I was 16, 15, and kind of by coincidence, he was carrying a motorcycle helmet, and I said, oh, I like motorcycles. I've been on one like once or twice in my entire life. He says, oh, well, call me up, and I'll take you for a ride. But he didn't give me his number. I had to go through hoops to get his number, and eventually, our relationship blossomed with a core of motorcycles in the center. When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I started commuting big time in the Bay Area. CB350 Honda, then a Yamaha, brand new Yamaha Seika 400 in 1982. Nice. Put about 30,000 miles between the two motorcycles there. But essentially built up my chops in the Bay Area on Bay Area freeways and Bay Area busy streets. And also, like Scott said, in the mid 80s, we did enduros. So I started riding dirt bikes in 82, 83, did a bunch of enduros for 5 years. So I got some dirt experience, and put away the motorcycles in the 90s, and started riding scooters in 2002 when we moved down into an area where it was more convenient to ride scooters as far as commuting.
So was that the first scooter was a Reflex?
Yeah. The first scooter, yeah, well, not counting the Honda 90 that we had a long time ago. Yes, the Scooter Reflex 250. Nice. And I had 2 of those in a row, put about 35,000 miles on each one. Wow. And so that was a lot of commuting experience, lane splitting experience.
How long was your ride each way on that?
What's that? How
long was your ride each way when you were commuting and during that period?
Mostly about 20 miles. Wow. So it was a good 35, 40 miles every day for many years. And a lot of street interaction with cars.
I bet.
And you're up to like 100,000 scooter miles now?
Total, about 130 total between dirt and street and scooter and everything.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I have a pretty decent amount of experience. Not that I don't get squirrely once in a while out there, but...
and one little accident on a road bike?
Yeah, in about 1982, on the Sacred Hornet, I did go down one time on the street. Got a little banged up, but nothing serious.
Well, good. You're sitting here with us now.
That's right. That's right.
At least the hologram is, yeah.
Yeah.
So
in the last 20 years, it's been all scooter, mainly commuting, but also Scott and I took trips up to Portland, Oregon from Sacramento a couple times on an MP3 and then the S-Max.
So was my first scooter the MP3?
MP3, yes.
Yeah, so my scooter history Julie started well before mine, and then I bought an MP3 for the 18 Cannonball just on a fluke because I didn't know better, and a friend had one, and I said, I didn't know much about the competition part, so I bought an MP3, which is, it's a battering ram, basically, but super reliable, and then I had a couple of those, and then for 21, I went to the the Forza to be competitive and help Julie out on the 21, so... I don't have nearly the scooter history that she does.
Well, yeah, thanks to commuting.
Well, it
adds up quickly.
You both have more than most people, even saying that you don't, which is really impressive.
In the last few years, Northern California has gotten very little rain in the wintertime. So when I was commuting, prior to the pandemic, I was able to ride year-round, which is something I would never do before that. Because I commuted 25 years or something if you add it up.
Wow.
And I would normally never ride in the wintertime. It's just too cold and wet and dark. Yeah. It's too risky. Yep. Just way too risky. But these last few years, there's been very little rain. So I could ride year round. He got me a heated jacket, heated gloves. It's totally doable.
Yeah. So... that's part one, section 1 of 4 sections. And let me tell you how serious that is.
Wow.
130,000 miles on 2 wheels, but what did she say, 40,000 on scooters?
Alone. That's impressive.
But she doesn't ride when it's cold and wet and dark, and that's where we live.
It's 8 months of our year. The other thing, the irony, Julie and I, what we have in common is we've both gone down once in our lives.
Well, I think Lonnie, you did in college. Lonnie, you've dropped down a couple of times.
I doubled that, yeah.
So they that's how they met. I mean, she saw him carrying a helmet when she was 16 years old.
That's pretty
had
impressive.
To track him down.
Wow,
she's a go-getter.
No kidding.
So they continue to talk to us about the Cannonball in this next section. So I just thought we'd just get started. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Keep it rolling.
Once I took the dog out.
I can't believe security didn't stop that dog at the door.
And why you didn't have to beat him though?
Poor little guy. Tried to keep up for a while. Here we go. So the Cannonball thing. How did you, Scott, you started this trend, but what was the discussion between the two of you to get involved and to do it? Was it the competitive thing, or was it just the fact that it was a challenge?
Yeah, so when I did 18, it was, I had no clue. I think I was sitting around and I saw it go by on the internet, and I'm a real adventure seeker, and so I just went and did it. And as I was coming home, it was from Morro Bay to Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so after the event was done, I immediately jumped on the scooter and started riding back home. And I had such a fun time doing the 18. I just smiles the whole way, all 10 days. And, seeing the country and the terrain and riding, I just loved it. So, and I know Julie loves riding too. And so I started hatching this plan of how could I talk her into it, because 10 days, 500 miles a day or thereabouts is, anybody, even if you like to ride, that's a lot.
It's a lot. And on a scooter especially.
Yeah. So I started hatching this plan of, okay, my goal is to talk her into it. And this is while I'm riding. And then I thought, well, I might be able to add some sweetness to this deal if I told her I thought she had a chance of winning. So knowing how the Cannonball worked, I gamed the system with basically the right size bike, and then I chose to be a domestique, like in cycling, where I would be the mule. I would haul all the tools, all the gear, everything. And since and then to be able to keep up with her, because she's lighter, I would be on a heavier bike, and I wouldn't worry about my score. I just sacrificed the score, so that's why I had the Forza. So I came home and talked to her, and she didn't say no. And as time went on and we got closer, she was pretty much all in. We signed up for 2020 at the time, and then of course COVID knocked it out. So I sold it as a really fun thing to do, and that she had a chance of doing well. But we had no clue how that would actually turn out, because she's not a road racer by any means. She's not the kind of person who scrapes the pegs, and I know there's better riders actually just in the event.
He doesn't mean that. He doesn't mean that.
Yeah, you don't. No. Well, she'll admit that, but it's better riders in terms of being able to scrape the
I get
pegs.
it, yeah.
But that's not what it takes to win the Cannonball. And so, knowing all those elements, from day one, she did well, and I don't know. You can tell him if you liked it or not.
Well, it was fun.
We know
it was interesting. It was going across the country, seeing all the states, and interacting with the people, and the whole competition thing adds a little spice to every day.
So we know how it turned out, Julie. You won it, and congratulations again on that. But let's talk about some of the things that happened on that ride that haven't come out, or you haven't spoke about, or if they even did. But was there? Let's talk about first. We'll go easy. What was your favorite stop out of those 10 days in the evening?
Well, there was one. I think it was Delta, Utah. The one where I have a plastic recorder, a little flute thing.
Yeah.
And I brought that and I played it as the guys were wrenching on their stuff and and all working on their scooters in the parking lot. I found a chair and sat down and played my recorder.
What song?
And that's what I like to do. So that was fun to do. And the clouds were kind of gathering, and it was very cool. So
Julie's a musician by hobby, and but loves to do that. So often when we travel anywhere, she'll request, can we bring a musical instrument? And if it's scooters and stuff, that's hard because she's a trumpet player by love. And so try to get a trumpet wrapped up and safe in a scooter is hard. We've done it when we went to Portland, but I told her, no, we can't do it on Cannonball. We need the room.
I begged.
Yeah, that's where we drew the line was the trumpet. But and then there were people. There's videos now of the 21 Cannonball with Julie playing like I don't know what it is, the Indian who coaxes the snake out of the basket.
Oh, right. The python. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. The python. No, is it a python or a cobra?
I don't know.
Cobra, you're right.
Cobra.
You're right. Yeah. Cobra.
Yeah.
What surprised me about that was he rode the Cannonball from, it sounded like the West Coast to Virginia or wherever he said they landed, and then he turned around and rode home. I mean, I thought most of those guys would just truck him across the country or whatever, and it just amazes me how tough those two are.
Yeah, I mean they're serious riders. They hacked it. They hacked the Cannonball, right? They figured it out.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
Well, like in life, my wife and I figured out it takes a team to be successful.
You're right. Thank you for managing her.
You're not the only one reading books, dumbass.
You are a team.
I liked his very married guy comment. She didn't say no.
Yeah.
And so I continued working.
That's as good as an endorsement you're going to get.
Yeah. And we also had some other people that we know and are friends of the podcast. We had Brooke Dane and Barry Donovan and one of your riders up north, Gildo. Yeah.
Gildo.
Yeah. So they
you need to pronounce that more clearly.
Well, you know what? It blows my mind that those guys want to go do that. I mean, it sounds adventurous, but It ain't for me. I'm not that tough.
It's brutal.
Yeah. I still want to do a long ride, but not that one.
Right. Well, we're going to do 40 bars in 4 days, and that's kind of tough on your midsection.
You can do that with one hand tied behind my back.
All right, let's continue on with the interview with Scott and Julie.
We were Julie and I rode together all the time, every minute, except for one time, which was we were out on Highway 50, loneliest road in the planet or whatever it is. And, that's pretty much WFO. You go on whatever her bike would go, because mine was a little faster. And it's just a long 20-mile straightaway, nothing but sagebrush. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a person. And this is in the middle of nowhere. And I look to my side and I see terror on this female's face. And she's standing there like no car, no nothing. I'm going to tell this very quickly because it goes on a long time. I told Julie, you go ahead. I've got to see what's going on. And I went, and this girl was, quote, lost. And I rode her double back down a dirt road to her van, and she got disoriented and confused. And I got her back to her van, gave her a couple $100. I think she was running from something. And then I had to ride for an hour and a half to try to catch Julie because she's, WFO. And aside to that story is when I'm trying to catch Julie, I ended up catching up to a sheriff who was going 55, which is, just not tolerable. Cannonball. And it was all double yellow for like 30 miles. So I said, how am I going to get by this sheriff on a double yellow and a 55? So I pull up alongside him on a double yellow going 55, and I'm waving my hands frantically. And I said, well, what I'll do is I'll try to get him to pull over, and I'll tell him this story about the lost girl, and then I'll get a pass. That just turned into a debacle. He didn't pull me over. He sped ahead, called his buddy ahead, and then his buddy pulled me over, and I told the story of the lost girl, and they let me go, and I caught Julie. So
wow,
that's the girl. That was the girl story. And I texted her later. She said she was okay, but it was pretty frightening to see somebody in the middle of nowhere, and I felt it was my civic duty. I don't have a lot of civic duty in me, but that was one of them.
Well, it's a good thing when she took you down the dirt road and found her van that somebody didn't jump out with a shotgun.
Guy in a Batman suit.
It was strange. Yeah. Every door in the van was completely open, and I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out what was going on. So I didn't have time to, I was on the clock.
Yeah. Wow. That's high strangeness. That's good. Was there, Julie, did you have one as well? A story like that?
Nothing like that.
You had some rivalry stuff.
There was a little bit of rivalry. The disturbing one to me was actually when I heard maybe after about day 3 or so. I mean, keep in mind, I won day 1 and I won day 2, yes, and I was tied after on day 3 I tied, so I still had a good lead after a few days. And I heard from one of the event leaders that there was a certain person or two, male, who refused to believe that I was legitimately ahead and winning. Me, old enough to be a grandmother, thank God, not one yet, but, here I am, a middle-aged woman out there, looking like it's starting to look like a runaway. And and there's somebody out there who's a rider thinking to himself, how is she doing that? She couldn't be doing it for real. She's got to be cheating somehow. Yeah. So that was a little bit, I've been underestimated a few times in my life. That's one of them. It's just disturbing that somebody would think that way. So
the couple of riders in question are very good physical riders. If you put them on a track or something, they would blow us away, all of us. And so then they translated that ability to why can't we make it happen in Cannonball? And again, Cannonball is not about raw speed. There's a lot going on there. So when the 110-pound Julie, who looks and is pretty tame, playing her recorder in the parking lot, is beating them daily. So then there's things like, well, maybe they're putting the scooters in a U-Haul, and maybe there's a secret thing going on.
Or he's taking my phone with him. He's taking the pictures at the checkpoints as if I'm there when I'm really not there.
So I put the kibosh on that. After every check, then I would take a picture of both of us physically together at the check.
I would be in his picture.
Short of us being a Photoshop expert, So, it's just a misunderstanding of they think speed is the only thing, but of course they weren't accounting for handicaps. And not to get too much into Cannonball, but you're allowed to take any route you want. And if you study the routes enough, you can find ways around cities and shortcuts. And so there's you can talk about that event too with your other female rival.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning of the event, I surveyed all the ladies. I just, my goal was to be first woman. I didn't know how it would work out. So I even went to the point of listing all the ladies' names and their rider numbers, because everybody gets a number. And so if I saw somebody on the road, and a lot of them have their rider numbers on their scooters, I would know who it was. So I memorized numbers and names in the people. The interesting thing was there was at least one other husband and wife team.
Yeah.
And on one of those teams, two at least. And one of them, she seemed to be a bit competitive or something. Like no eye contact whatsoever. Never said a word to me or anything. Didn't even look at me. And she happened to be the one that Scott kind of passed when I was ahead of him because of that desert girl situation. He passed the husband and wife on his way to catching up to me. And we had a little bit of back and forth as we were going into, I think, Fernley.
Fernley, Nevada.
Fernley, yeah. And just prior to getting to Fernley, we had, because of the route studying skills of my domestique, we strategically took the right route to get into Fernley, which was not necessarily, the route that everybody else took. And we end up getting to the hotel. The thing was, they got ahead of us.
They got ahead of us, and they knew they were ahead of us going into Fernley.
Yeah.
And when we arrive at the hotel, we're there, and then they come in behind us.
Right. We had been there for a few minutes when they rolled in.
Indignation that there is of like, how did that even possibly happen? Yeah. You were behind us, and now you come in ahead of us. And so it's just one of those, you're not trying to be mean to people, but it's a kind of when there's a tension there, there's a little bit of, rivalry. And so we were laughing pretty hard. In fact, before we arrived at the hotel, I said to Julie on the intercom, I said, wouldn't it be funny if, and then of course we pull into the hotel but it didn't help the relationship any.
No, not at all.
I mean, ours was fine, but Julie's with her.
Yeah. So that you guys took a wormhole. That's what happened.
We did, and it just turns out that particular wormhole, I know Fernley very well. I've been through it many times, and if you tell Google, take me through the town, of course it takes you through the 37 stoplights, and there's a complete bypass around the whole town, which is perfect for scooters, perfect for maybe going a little over the speed limit, and so you can knock off a good 10 or 15 minutes on that wormhole.
Wow.
And so it pays off.
Well, congratulations to both of you on that. I mean, the planning and the execution and then the finish is impressive, and it's been talked about a lot in the scooter community. So that's wonderful. Good job. Just so you know, they said thanks after I said that. That's where I edited it.
Well, our friends are competitive.
They are very, very competitive.
No kidding. Just real nice couple that would step on your neck to beat you across the finish line.
Well, it's a race.
It is. That's impressive.
And the thing is, they planned it. They looked at the maps. They looked at the roads. They looked at ways to maximize and minimize different pieces of it. And you gotta be impressed with that.
Well, and Scott found somebody else that didn't say no.
Can we go back to the girl in the van?
No.
Or is that a different podcast?
Is she still lost?
And the wormhole. Well, I've never heard that term before.
Oh, it's a science fiction term. It's how you fold space. You didn't watch Dune? You don't do those things?
Shit. Enough
Remember
said.
we talked quantum mechanics a little bit ago? That's a wormhole from. So, all right, let's. Keith Pendominono
Right.
was with me for the interview, and he, like I said, he's enjoying the beach right now in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But he asked a very good question near the end of the interview, and so I want to play that.
It took him that long. Normally, he's a better.
Yeah, he said a few things, but I edited them out.
Oh,
He's left-
back
left
on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, there he goes. But here's Keith's question and Scott and Julie's answer, which I think was one of the highlights of the whole interview. So here we go.
Your mental game for spinning miles. I mean, are you looking at percentages? Are you blank-minded? Are you watching the white lines? What do you do mentally to get through a 350-mile day?
Or a 500 mile
Or a
day.
500-mile day, or whatever the
Three
case may be.
500, yeah, 3 500 plus
In a row.
miles in a row.
And a fourth one 2 days after
Julie,
that.
you go first because I know what I do. So.
Well, what I do is I watch the mileage. I'm very, very keyed into the miles as they pass by. So I'm looking at the mileage and figuring it out in my head. Okay, we're 20% done, we're 25% done, or halfway, or whatever. I'm thinking numbers the whole way. And at the same time, Scott and I have microphones, so we're talking back and forth, and we're talking about all kinds of things. But one of the things, of course, we talk about is strategy and how we should approach certain obstacles or things that we need to overcome, dirt roads or whatnot. So there is a lot of conversation going on, but I'm focused on that mileage the entire time. No matter if it's a 200-mile day or a 500-mile day, I'm looking at that mileage, and because I want to know where I am and how much I have to go to get through the day.
So, I've done it twice under drastically different conditions. In 2018, I was alone, and so you got your head, and I guess I would admit I'm a strange person on a motorcycle. I love every minute I'm on any machine I'm on, and so I tend to look at the terrain. I tend to, I'm not so much a mileage counter, but I just enjoy the wind and the terrain, and I never listen to music at all, no matter what. So that was in 18. I just enjoy the miles, and then in 21 with Julie, being able to talk to her, we probably talked, I'm going to say 30% of the total minutes we're actually talking to each other.
Wow.
And we talk about every possible topic in life. And so it's 50% riding in Cannonball, and it's 50% your sons and politics. And it is such a joy to have somebody you love that you can be with doing what you love. And for me, it's just a pure joy every minute to be with her and laughing about the crazy things, you can laugh about as a husband and wife, and the rivalries and the strategies. And so for me, it's a big video game. It's a big entertainment.
I mean, that's the part that kind of got to me, that they're riding together, they're talking about everything in their lives, and they have that closeness, that intimacy over an intercom, over a communication device, while they're riding and competing in that race. And that touched me. Go ahead.
Can I just say that I love you guys?
And we don't have intercoms. We all spent our money on those silly things, and it never worked. We got to get the ones that they have. And I love you too.
You know what? If we could talk that much, we probably wouldn't love each other.
I have to say that interview was a lot longer than what we shared on the podcast here. And if you want to hear the whole thing in its entirety, just once again, sign up for our Patreon account. It's a small amount per wait, we don't have one of those. But if you do want it, I'm happy to send it to you.
You had me buying in there for a second.
So, what do you think, Mark?
I'm impressed by their dedication.
Yeah.
That's my only question now is, do they have it in them again?
Well, I did ask that question.
Won, so
I didn't include it, and I think that they're leaning toward taking that ride again.
Wow!
And I think for them, it's more about. I mean, they're going to. I'm not sure about the competitive level of it, because you can hear it. They enjoy the ride. They enjoy the connection to the environment, and And it's all pretty impressive. Maybe they'll just ride it and do it as tourists, which is the way I do it.
Well, I think less people would not like them. Sounds like they didn't have all friends on this trip.
So anyway, this is great stuff, and there's more people involved with the Cannonball. We know that, the planners, organizers, and we're not done talking about it because it's just such a cool event.
Yep.
But Scott and Julie and Scott, thank you, and let's move on to our next subject. So, guess what I did?
Whoa, what?
You went and opened a scooter store.
Yeah, I did. I did open It's the only exclusive Vespa Piaggio store other than LA on the West Coast.
And it's a really cool store, too.
Oh, thanks.
It is very
Thanks.
cool.
But that's not what I wanted to say.
Right.
It's southsoundscooters.com. I did my first interview at the store.
What?
Yeah. I sat down with somebody in my office and did an interview. And his name is John, Dr. John. And he's a friend of the store. And he and I are becoming friends. A very impressive guy.
I met John.
Yes, you did.
Friday
Yes, you
afternoon,
did. You
yeah.
did. Yeah, he came down for a little happy hour.
And he knew Jeff.
Well, he knew his brother knew. His
yeah.
brother knew my stepbrother, Jeff Carlson. Jeff. And Jeff told a story on the podcast years ago, the
Love that
Calaveras
story,
County
yes.
Monster.
Yep,
It's been very
Classic.
popular. Go back to that one. It's a bonus episode.
Episode 21.
But John is a rider. He's got a 300, but he's had big bikes. He's had fast cars. He's also a kayaker and a kayak instructor.
Hence the title of our
podcast, Cannonballs and
I was
Kayaks,
wondering about
Kayaks
that.
and Cannonballs, however we did it. But he said, "Hey, I'd like to share a story with you," and he did, and I was blown away.
Oh, cool.
So I want to share this. I'm not sure we're going to talk about it afterwards, but maybe a little bit. But pretty cool. So here's Dr. John in his story. Let's just let him talk. And so I'm sitting with Dr. John, and he told me a really great story the other day, and he's agreed to share it with us. So, John, I'm just going to let you go.
Well, okay. Well, I always love telling this story. It's pretty amazing. I guess I have to preface it all by saying that my wife Jan and I, and my other son Matthew, I had a son. We had a son, Christopher, who was on a ventilator in an intensive care unit in our home, unable to move from the chin down. His whole life really fully manifested it at 2 years, but began to manifest after a few months. And so he was completely and utterly dependent. He couldn't breathe on his own, couldn't save himself if his breathing apparatus failed in any way. He couldn't do much of anything. He could smile. Anything that was from the chin up, he was okay. So meant yes and meant no, and that was enough to actually get him through high school. He was just like a person who was stuck. Anyway, that's the background, and throughout those years, and Christopher was with us until just a couple years ago, 3 years ago. Throughout those years, I maintained my sanity. Jan was very gracious, and I had Wednesdays off, and so on Wednesdays, I'd work on things and do things, and in so doing, I became a pretty good kayaker. In fact, myself and a buddy of mine, Les Urich, became very good kayakers, and there's a long story behind that. But what it boils down to is that years ago, this is in the late 90s, Les and I were teaching a kayaking class up in Nia Bay it was an advanced kayaking class on how to handle ocean conditions. And Nia Bay, for those who don't know, is at the extreme northwestern tip of Washington. I live in Tacoma, and Tacoma to Nia Bay is about 5 hours. And even now, it's remote. And back in the late 90s, when phones, if they existed at all, were the size of satchels, there was simply no coverage at all. And so the little town of Nia Bay out on the tip of the peninsula was very remote, but it had a wonderful little harbor that enabled us to do some work in the harbor and then get out into to the ocean a bit. Les and I and about 12 students, I would guess, and the students had paid for this instruction. We all met at a hostel up there on this is Macaw country, Northwest Indian, remarkable area. Remarkable. Anybody wants to see a fabulous museum, go check out the Macaw Museum in Nia Bay. But the Macaws had a hostel up there, and so we all met on Friday evening and had a potluck, which means people had to take most of the day off of Friday, so they were taking it real seriously. And after the potluck, Les and I did some lecturing, and we got up the next morning, spent Saturday on the water, and same thing on Saturday night, had a potluck and more instruction, and then met on the water, and it was a pretty big deal. And I'm guessing it's about 9:30 or so on the water, and I'm paddling along. I've got a group, half the group is of 12, but I have 6, and we're talking, and I'm doing some instruction, and I suddenly feel this deep need to go home, and you kind of shake it off. Doesn't make any sense, and you do it again. I gotta go. And you shake it off, and again, finally, it happened, and I just don't. You have to understand, I'm a Christian, and so I couch all these terms, all these experiences in Christian language and belief. But I felt compelled enough, so much, that I paddled up to my buddy and said, "Les, all I can tell you is I got to go. Now you know what I know." And Les, being a good friend, said, "Well, okay, man, go do what you got to do." And so I left these 6 students with Les. Remember, they had paid for this. This is, I had to go. So anyway, I doubled back. I got to the boat launch, put my boat on my truck, and headed back to the hostel to get my gear. I presume that probably took about an hour. And then Nia Bay is 5 hours from Tacoma. And there's nothing around it. It is back, particularly in those days, and even now, it's very remote. And I take off, and I'm going along, and I'm moving along pretty quick. And I see a state patrolman in kind of a notch on the left side over here, and I don't even wait for him to come out. I just pull over, because I know I'm going to get pulled over. And sure enough, I stop, and I see his lights on, and he comes out, and he comes up to me, and he says, "You seem to be in a bit of a hurry." And I said, "Well," and I told him, I said, I have a son at home on a ventilator, and I just have to go. Now you know what I know. I got to. And he's this very gracious, incredibly gracious. This is where I generally get a little misty. He says, "Okay, go ahead, but be careful." And I said, "Thanks, man." And I took off again. So, okay, 5 hours now from having left Nia Bay, 6 hours from having this urge to do something. I'm pulling up into my driveway. I park the car, I jump out, I run in, and about a minute or 2 minutes earlier, my son had become decannulated, meaning that his trach had come out. And, he couldn't save himself, and the nurse was unable to get the trach back in. And just as his eyes were turning up in his head, I stepped up to the side of the bed. And I'm a dentist. I'm familiar with all kinds of emergency situations. And I was able to take his trach, put it on his ambu bag, is what we call it. And his trachea had collapsed. I was able to put the tip of the trach into the trachea. It reinflated, rotated, and get it in place and pump some oxygen into my son's lungs and save his life.
Wow.
So, that started 6 hours earlier. I mean, how do you explain that? Okay, now that's from my perspective. Now, this is where I will get misty, I'm sure. Now, remember, my son was on a ventilator. He couldn't move. And Jan and I are Christians. And I did believe and do believe so strongly that what we could give him was hope. And Christopher was a strong Christian, and we prayed and we watched, cartoons with Christian themes and other things as well, of course. But we just bathed him in faith and in hope. So I want to look at it from a different perspective. I want to look at it from, and he was probably 10 at the time. think of a 10-year-old boy who suddenly is panicking that his life is very obviously in danger, and he throws out a prayer. And his dad walks in and saves his life. Right?
Yeah.
That prayer began to be answered 6 hours before it was even prayed. And so I just want to thank the Lord for that. I mean, there's for me, there's no any other way to explain it. So there you have it. There's my, and with a son on a ventilator all those years, there were, thousands of miracles. Christopher lived, he wasn't expected to live to be 5, and he lived to be almost 30. And there's many stories involved in that, and thousands of miracles, and a number of miracles that are, remarkable. But that's one that just try to wrap your head around that and give it an explanation.
It's a touching, cool, and perplexing story. And, with timelines and communication through the void.
Yeah, we think we know. I remember long ago, I didn't believe in anything spiritual. I came to Christianity through hypnosis and then Tibetan Buddhism, and that's a whole story in itself. But I can remember when the notion of there being something other than what I could see or touch first occurred to me, because I grew up as an atheist. And that had so much impact on me, and the necessity to follow that up further was so strong that it led me into this walk with the Lord. But I am just when I think of my son and his inability, I can't say Christopher never sinned, because he could think, But here's a boy who never had an opportunity to do anything wrong because he could never move. From his earliest stages was dependent on others and on God. And so it's something when your son is your hero.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
You betcha. My pleasure.
It's a different story, and also at the same time, it fits nicely in a lot of the topics that we've talked about. So.
Well, I suppose I could tell the story while drinking a beer with you, too, and it'd fit in a little bit better.
All right.
Thanks, John. You bet.
Wow.
Okay, I'm a non-believer, but maybe I'm a little closer now to a ghost or a spiritual.
Pretty cool.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's, they say that the time is only applicable on the plane that we're on, and which means that when it starts moving in that ethereal
urethra
area, it just doesn't matter. It can reach him at any time. But what a beautiful story!
No kidding.
And you don't hear many atheists going to that strong a Christian.
He's a really interesting guy, and he and I have started talking about it a little bit, and he gets so between my strong opinions and his, which aren't necessarily in alignment, but not far off, and I go, wait a minute, I can't do this in a scooter store because there's customers walking in and we're busy, and so I'm going to grab him and I'm going to make him have a beer with me and have that conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to meet him.
Yeah,
he could be the official dentist of chasing ghosts on scooters in bars.
We have dentists in our family too. Anyway.
I think we need confession more than we need a dentist.
But so hey, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. We didn't do spooky news, we didn't do scooter news because scooter.
But you had unfacts.
We did have unfun facts, but I'd like to thank the Taggerts and Dr. John for sharing their time and their stories. Hey, spring has sprung. Hey, we've taken a couple of rides. We didn't even talk about those because this will get a little bit long. But we're going to get out there riding, find ourselves some haunted bars, and start planning our pub scoot.
And we're going to do another podcast real soon.
You said that last time. And we are. Hey, thanks to Weeknights for the original music. Thank you, our listeners, for listening. And thanks to my podcast pals and Chong and Pendominono.
Wherever you are.
Everybody but Bobby Chong.
For making it all happen. So anyway, thanks. Be safe. Copyright 2022 by Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars.